A new geopolitical tremor is shaking the world's longest undefended border. The once stable relationship between the United States and Canada is under pressure, with Alaska at the center of a growing dispute. Alaska, separated from the lower 48 by nearly 500 miles of Canadian territory, has always relied on Canadian cooperation for access. Now, proposals, most notably from former President Donald Trump, are challenging this arrangement, demanding a permanent, sovereign U.S. corridor through Canada. This isn't just about geography, it's about sovereignty, security, and the future of North American cooperation. For decades, agreements have allowed Americans and goods to transit through Canada to Alaska, but that stability is now in question. U.S. voices argue that national security shouldn't depend on another country's goodwill, while Canada insists its sovereignty is non-negotiable. The rhetoric has forced both nations into a tense diplomatic standoff, with the world watching closely. The outcome could redefine U.S.-Canada relations for generations. Will this historic partnership survive, or are we entering a new colder era? Every move now is under intense scrutiny as both sides weigh their next steps. To understand today's dispute, we must revisit 1867 when the U.S. bought Alaska from Russia. Once mocked as Seward's Folly, Alaska became a resource powerhouse after gold and oil were discovered. Its strategic Arctic location is vital, but its isolation, cut off from the lower 48 by Canada, creates logistical challenges. The Alaska Highway, built during World War II, remains the only land link, winding entirely through Canadian soil. During the Cold War, Alaska's proximity to the Soviet Union made it a military front line, further highlighting its dependence on Canadian cooperation. U.S. defense relies on access through Canada, a reality managed by treaties and informal agreements. This arrangement has worked for decades, but some U.S. strategists have always seen it as a vulnerability. The current dispute is the latest manifestation of this old concern. Alaska is both a strategic asset and a logistical puzzle, now at the heart of a new diplomatic crisis. The legacy of 1867 is a state that's both vital and vulnerable. That vulnerability is now center stage. The standoff escalated when Donald Trump revived the idea of a sovereign U.S. corridor, the Alaska Land Bridge, through Canada. At a 2025 rally, Trump framed the corridor as essential for national security and economic independence, arguing the U.S. shouldn't need Canada's permission to reach Alaska. He suggested a deal could be struck, perhaps with compensation, but the core idea is U.S. control over a strip of land following the Alaska Highway. This would create a permanent U.S.-controlled route, eliminating border crossings and Canadian oversight. Trump's push has turned a fringe idea into a mainstream political issue, pressuring both Washington and Ottawa. Supporters say it would streamline commerce and guarantee military access. Critics see it as an unnecessary provocation. The Canadian government, forced to respond, has issued strong condemnations. In the U.S., the debate is now a litmus test for nationalist politics. What was once a symbol of cooperation is now a source of division. The Alaska Land Bridge has become a flashpoint in U.S.-Canada relations. For the U.S., the push for a secure Alaska link is about economics and defense. Alaska supplies vital oil, seafood, and minerals, with exports topping $5.8 billion last year. But shipping goods over land means navigating Canadian customs and regulations, raising costs by up to 30%. A sovereign corridor could cut costs and boost competitiveness for Alaskan businesses. Militarily, Alaska is home to key air bases and missile defense systems, critical for Arctic and Indo-Pacific security. U.S. planners worry about relying on Canada for military transit, even if the risk of denial is remote. The Pentagon's recent reviews highlight the logistical challenges of Arctic operations. While the current administration hasn't endorsed the land bridge, it acknowledges the need for reliable access. The debate is how to secure Alaska without damaging the U.S.-Canada alliance. The stakes are high economic efficiency versus diplomatic fallout. The U.S. must weigh its strategic needs against the risk of a rift with its closest ally. The corridor debate is about more than a road. It's about the future of North American security. For Canada, the idea of a U.S. corridor is a red line, an affront to national sovereignty. Prime Minister Trudeau and all major parties have rejected the proposal outright, declaring Canadian territory is not for sale. The land in question is home to Canadian citizens and Indigenous First Nations with deep historical ties and legal rights. The notion of a foreign-controlled corridor cutting through their land is unthinkable. Canadian officials argue the current system works. The U.S. already enjoys unfettered access, guaranteed by decades of trust. Ottawa sees the new demands as disrespectful and unnecessary. There's also fear of setting a dangerous precedent. If the US can demand a corridor here, what's next? The dispute touches on broader issues like control of the Northwest Passage, which Canada claims as internal waters. For Canada, this is about more than a highway. It's about defending the principle of sovereignty from coast to coast. The corridor proposal has united Canadians in rare political consensus. The message is clear. Canada's borders are not negotiable. The standoff is about identity as much as territory. Canada is determined to hold the line. The economic fallout from this dispute could be massive. The US and Canada share nearly $900 billion in annual trade, with millions of jobs on the line. Industries like automotive and energy are deeply integrated, relying on seamless cross-border supply chains. Any disruption, tariffs, slowdowns, or loss of trust, could cripple factories and spike costs on both sides. Canada is the top export market for 32 US states, while the US buys 75% of Canadian exports. Canada also supplies critical resources like potash, uranium, and aluminum to the US. A trade war would be devastating for both economies, but Canada isn't without leverage. Even without tariffs, uncertainty can chill investment and business collaboration. The Alaska Standoff threatens to undermine the stability that underpins this trillion-dollar partnership. Companies may hesitate to invest, fearing future disruptions. The question, is a sovereign corridor worth risking the economic engine that supports millions? The cost of mistrust could far outweigh any logistical gains. The stakes are as much economic as they are political. The Alaska Corridor dispute strikes at the heart of US-Canada defense cooperation, NORAD. For over 60 years, NORAD has relied on trust and seamless collaboration to defend North American airspace. Rising Arctic tensions with Russia and China make this partnership more vital than ever. A political standoff could erode trust, complicate intelligence sharing, and disrupt joint military exercises. Canadian and US forces train together, share command, and rely on each other for Arctic security. If relations sour, even routine cooperation could become difficult. In the worst case, calls to rethink NORAD itself could emerge, weakening continental defense. Ironically, the push for a corridor meant to enhance security could undermine it by alienating a crucial ally. The seamless partnership that allows a US jet to refuel from a Canadian tanker is built on political goodwill. That goodwill is now at risk. The dispute is a reminder. Security alliances depend on trust, not just treaties. The cost of political friction could be far greater than any strategic gain. Beyond politics, real people are caught in the crossfire. Communities along the Alaska Highway, Canadian and American, are deeply connected, with families, businesses, and cultures intertwined. Indigenous First Nations, whose ancestral lands straddle the border, see the corridor as a threat to their rights and way of life. Legal challenges and protests are likely if the project moves forward. Many Alaskans value their relationship with Canada and worry about the impact on tourism and daily life. A hardened border could divide communities and disrupt wildlife. The human cost is measured in strained friendships, economic uncertainty, and lost trust. The consequences are personal, not just political. The Alaska Corridor dispute has exposed a deep rift in US-Canada relations. What began as political rhetoric now threatens economic security and human ties built over generations. The US seeks security and economic efficiency. Canada defends its sovereignty and partnership. The stakes, a trillion-dollar trade relationship, Arctic defense, and the lives of border communities. Resolving this will require diplomacy, respect, and creative solutions, perhaps modernizing treaties or investing in joint infrastructure. The standoff is a stark reminder that even the closest alliances need constant care. The core issue, balancing national interests with mutual respect. Can the US and Canada reaffirm their partnership, or is a new era of tension inevitable? The answer will shape the future of North America.